Hey everyone, welcome to Plants and Politics. I have an update to share about one of Trump's capital terrorists. It's time for an episode of Where Are They Now?
Matthew Bledsoe was arrested.
Patrick Montgomery was in court.
Jonathan Manapa will stay in federal custody.
No, I don't take responsibility at all.
If you haven't heard yet, Robert Palmer received the longest sentence so far. Palmer is a 54-year-old man from Florida. He was seen at the front of the crowd at the entrance to the Lower West Terrace Tunnel. That, of course, is where the most horrific violence took place on January 6th. He was also seen in photos and on video wearing a Florida for Trump hat and a Trump jacket. And he was holding a sign which read, quote, "Biden is a pedophile." First, he was captured on video cheering for the violence that others were perpetrating. Then he was caught on camera taking part in the violence himself. Palmer chucked a plank of wood at officers inside the tunnel. He then picked up a fire extinguisher that someone else had dropped, and he sprayed the officers with it. When the extinguisher was empty, Palmer then pulled his arm back and he threw the container at the cops with his full force. After it fell and it rolled back toward him, he picked it up again and then he hurled it at the officers a second time. In addition to all of this, Palmer threw a large, hard traffic cone, like a traffic barrier, at the police. And then he's screaming and cursing at the cops. And while he's doing that, he chucked a 4 to 5 foot pole at the officers. He threw it at them like a spear, like a javelin. So Palmer was arrested on March 17th. He was stupid enough to give an interview to the Huffington Post that same month, because these people still don't get it. They still don't realize that we now have these new fandangle contraptions. They're called video cameras. They're called cell phones. So, they were at the Capitol. They're like partying like it's 1899, and they didn't realize that every move they made, every breath they took, the feds were watching them. So anyway, and I don't agree. Let me just say this. I don't agree with the over surveillance of Americans. But if you're walking onto federal property and you don't know that your every move is being recorded, you're just an idiot. So Palmer told the Huffington Post that he did nothing wrong. He said, "Oh, I'm just a patriot." He said literally that the Biden administration was trying to, quote, vilify the patriots. In fact, Palmer claimed on a fundraising page for his legal defense, he said that his actions were only a reaction to the police, because he said that the police were just brutalizing Trump supporters for no reason. And according to Palmer, I got physical, but it was only because this officer shot me with a rubber bullet first. I mean, that was, first of all, a complete and utter fabrication that he later recanted at his sentencing hearing. But that was his story at the time. That's what he was sticking to. But even if that were true, this is what gets me with these people. Let's say that was true. Let's say that the police shot him with a rubber bullet first. We've been saying that for a year. We've been saying that at BLM protests, that the police were out of control, that they were overly aggressive with BLM protesters, that they were shooting them with rubber bullets, sometimes even in the face. And yet these people, these same people who are now using this as a defense, said, "Oh, no, BLM is out of control." The reason BLM protesters are even protesting is because Black and brown people have been treated horrifically by police forever. They have been murdered by police for no reason, unarmed Black and brown people. So it's not okay to protest, and it's not okay to maybe become violent in return when you're being murdered for no reason. But these guys want to say that because they were hit with tear gas and rubber bullets, they had every right to do what they did to the police. What's the difference? Your skin is white? Anyway, sorry to go off on that tangent. I'll get back to the story because this guy did a lot. He was seen and heard on video lying on the ground. He was literally belly aching after getting shot. And he's whining and he said, quote, "This is the United States. This is what our country is doing to its citizens." Again, because you're white now, it's supposed to matter. Womp womp and thoughts and prayers. So anyway, Palmer was indicted on multiple charges. He was hit with civil disorder, assaulting officers, entering restricted building or grounds, 2 counts of disorderly conduct, 2 counts of physical violence, and the penalties for all of these crimes were increased because they hit him also with the additional increased charge of using a dangerous or deadly weapon while committing these crimes. So Palmer was facing several decades in prison, and I'm sure his attorney told him how screwed he was, given the amount of video evidence against this guy. So in October, he took a plea deal. Palmer pleaded guilty to 1 felony count of assaulting officers using a dangerous weapon. Sentencing guidelines for that crime ranged from 63 to 78 months, unfortunately. And unfortunately for Palmer, he got the one judge who has the ovaries to put these domestic terrorists behind bars for longer periods of time than what the prosecutor is requesting. At the sentencing hearing, Palmer had tears in his eyes. I would too if I was up against Judge Tanya Chutkan. And she got him to admit that he was hit with a rubber bullet only after and because he assaulted police. She asked him, quote, "When you threw the fire extinguisher and the pole, were you acting in self-defense?" And Palmer responded, quote, "No, ma'am, I was not." He also said, quote, "The officers were so brave to stand there and take the stuff they did. I'm just very ashamed to be a part of that. It was a lie. It should have never happened." And in a pre-sentencing letter to the judge, Palmer said he now realizes that he was lied to by Trump and others. And he wrote, quote, "Little did I realize that they were the tyrannical ones, desperate to hold on to power at any cost, even by creating the chaos they knew would happen with such rhetoric." But Chutkan questioned his authenticity, and she noted that the real patriots, the real heroes that day were the officers who were attacked. So, who's to say, but it seems like Palmer was essentially just trying to avoid accountability by claiming that, oh, I'm just this puppet in Trump's election fraud game. Because, it's one thing to say, oh, I did what I did and I take full responsibility and blah, blah, blah. But, he's again pointing to someone else. Oh, it's because they lied to me. I mean, you're a grown freaking man. Luckily, Chutkan didn't buy this, although she did say that she agreed that there were people in power who exploited the trust of Trump's followers, people like Palmer. She pointed out rightfully that there were millions of people who believed the same things that Palmer believed. There are millions of people in the country who also believe to this day that the election was stolen, but they didn't take it to the point that Palmer did. They didn't go and invade the Capitol and assault officers. So Palmer's attorney was arguing for 24 months in prison, which wouldn't make sense given the fact that Jacob Chansley, the QAnon shaman, received a 41-month sentence. And then Scott Fairlamb, the first defendant who pleaded guilty to assault, he received also 41 months. Well, in the end, Judge Chutkan ordered Palmer to spend 63 months behind bars, so more than 5 years. And she explained her decision saying, quote, "Every day we are hearing about reports of anti-democratic factions people plotting potential violence in 2024. It has to be made clear that trying to stop the peaceful transfer of power, assaulting law enforcement, is going to be met with certain punishment. Not staying at home, not watching Netflix, not doing what you were doing before you got arrested. Why aren't more judges saying and thinking these same things? Can we just send all of the cases to Chutkan and be done with it? They're all whispering to each other. They're all saying like, oh man, pray you don't get Chutkan. You know, they have to be. They're like, oh my God, I hope I don't get her. So I'm loving it. I'm like McDonald's, ba-da-ba-ba-ba. I'm loving it. Anyway, if I hear any more, I'll let you guys know. Thanks so much for watching and listening. Take care. I'll talk with you soon.